What constitutes a good, memorable quest? Engaging storyline, emotional investment, interesting characters, player choices. How about all of the above? Because Shadows Under Aimrah, a Tamriel Rebuilt questline, comes with all of these fine alchemical ingredients, making it, in my humble opinion, one of the best side quests in Morrowind. There's a lot to cover, but first, let's state the obvious. Shadows Under Aimrah is entirely inspired by Lovecraft's The Shadow over Innsmouth. In fact, entire town of Aimrah has this subtle layer of Lovecraftian mist all over it. Take for example a strange little rats in the walls side quest, but today I'm not so interested in their simple comparison. Having a story inspired by Lovecraft is one thing, but making it work within the universe of Elder Scrolls is far more important. And what makes Shadow Under Aimrah so good is that it can be viewed on its own. It doesn't rely on any prior exterior knowledge. One doesn't even have to know about Lovecraft to fully enjoy this storyline. With that said, Lovecraft does feel like at home in Morrowind. I'd even argue that Morrowind's main storyline, with all the themes of forbidden cults, disturbing dreams, madness, body horror, has a rather strong Lovecraftian element. And like so many good horror stories, this one is also set in a small remote town. Aimrah is a Veloti town set on the northern shore of Lake Andoram. On the current map, this is as far south as one can go. Next update coming later this year will expand the map further south, but for now, Aimrah sits alone, close to the edge of the explorable world, giving it even more of that otherworldly feeling. You know how old medieval maps would have all kinds of monsters illustrating unknown regions? Well, in this case, we literally do have a monster hiding in the corner, but I'm already saying too much. Aimrah is a secluded community of sailors and fishermen, seamlessly blending into the vibrant yet sleepy landscape of southern Unterine region. I gotta say, Unterine was always one of my favorite parts of Morrowind. Simply exploring along the mighty Tyr River and witnessing numerous farms and villages peppered throughout the lush orange-green Arcadia is something I honestly never get tired of. There's warmth and peace in here, rarely found elsewhere in Morrowind. But once we approach Lake Andoram, things get a little bit trickier. You see, area boasts an unusually high population of dreugh, and if you ever encountered one, you'd know that's bad. Dreugh are rightfully so one of the most feared creatures in Morrowind, and Tamriel Rebuilt even introduced their non-aquatic form, known simply as the land dreugh. They were first seen in Oblivion, and Tamriel Rebuilt decided to add them to Morrowind as they fit right in with the rest of the alien fauna. These creatures can be found lurking all around Aimrah, mostly near water, and are even more aggressive than their aquatic or sea form. Oh, did I forget to mention, dreugh play a major role in today's story, as Shadow Under Aimrah utilizes rather successfully all the mystique and obscure lore surrounding them. But more on that later. To finally begin our story, let's head to the town. And on the way, make sure to say hi to Horov Philippian, an exiled scholar found standing on the road outside Aimrah. You see, Horov is something of a scientist, a scholar of biology, and he came here to study, specifically, you guessed it, dreugh. What I love about this little encounter is that it appears so random and unrelated to anything really. But the more we dig around the town and unravel some of its bizarre conspiracies, it becomes obvious that Horov serves as an introduction, sort of, to the madness that is Aimrah.
I'm listening.
First of all, Horov will have this to say regarding his interests. Dreugh are reclusive, but it's said that a great number of them live in the waters of Lake Andoram, and this is why I came here. You see, the dreugh found in Morrowind are different from the ones found elsewhere in Tamriel, and I don't just mean their physiological attributes, they behave differently too, as if they had a culture of their own. It would be interesting to study them in the field, but perhaps I'm not cut out for that. So naturally we can then ask him about what happened, and he will reply this. Well, nothing actually happened. Not yet, anyway. It was more of a feeling, or a hunch, if you will, that I was in mortal danger, like I was constantly being watched by someone. At night, they tried to break into the room I was staying in, or that's what I think. I decided I couldn't take it anymore, packed my things and left. I'll be going to Almas Thirr now. From there, I can find a ship to take me back to civilization. It's very easy to dismiss horror as being overly paranoid, especially in this secluded Indoril town, surrounded by brooding dark elves. But what if there's more to it? It's Morrowind, of course there is more to it, as we're gonna see. Our main quest giver is a priest, Ivan Salat, found by the shrine near the lighthouse. And it begins as a simple find a missing person kind of a task, with us going around and asking locals for any info. And the missing person in question is Jabin, young dummer and sailor employed by Captain Obedur Marvus on the ship called Paruddma. Now, interesting thing about Ivan is that he also serves as a sort of a spiritual advisor to local sailors, known to be rough and lacking in faith. And Jabin would regularly visit Ivan and talk to him about different topics, as he was somewhat troubled. So over time, Ivan and Jabin grew kinda close, with even Ivan self-admittedly seeing himself almost as a father figure to young Jabin, who was an orphan after all. However, Jabin recently failed to show up, and naturally Ivan is worried about him. So our first logical task is to visit Paruddma, one of the two ships docked in Aimrah. And Paruddma, let's just say you can't miss it. It's in a pretty rough shape, burdened by heavy barnacle growth, and it just gives off a bad vibe, especially due to an extremely unfriendly crew, including Captain Obedur, who, by the way, not only doesn't know where's Jabin, he doesn't even seem bothered, suggesting that he probably ran off with the local barmaid, Anara. Now, we'll be told to leave, however, we could or should check ship's cargo hold, just in case, leading to an interesting encounter. Ship's interior is equally disturbing, dark, moldy, and overgrown with barnacle. We need to get to the small prison cell, at least that's what I think it is, in the deepest, darkest part of the ship. However, it's empty except for all the smelly drag wax and a bunch of poison. Strange, but no Jabin. And then, on our way back, we'll be confronted by Derlatir, a nosy crew member who, to my pleasure, happens to be a bossmer. We can either bribe him to let us leave or fight him. But having this super rare opportunity to ridicule a bossmer in-game, why wasting coins? I mean, calling this guy a bearded worm is too good to pass, so I choose to fight him. And if you know Morrowind, taunting an enemy into a fight is a perfectly legal way to murder any NPC. So with Derlatir's bloodied, lifeless body laying on the floor, we are free to leave Paruddma for good, since we cannot come back. But we do have one final lead, barmaid Anara. So let's head to the Sailor's Inn and see if we can find her. Sailor's Inn is, well, exactly what you'd expect to find in this kind of a place.
What is this regarding, Nord?
Not very cheerful. There's a Dunmer threatening to beat an Argonian just because, well, just because. A local blind drunkard, obnoxious outlander.
Ah, greetings. What shall we talk about?
Well, anyways, Innkeeper will point us to Anara, so at least we have someone to talk to. And moving on, next segment will be heavy into dialogues, so allow me to briefly cover most important parts. You see, it turns out that Anara does know Jabin, but their relationship isn't romantic at all. They are close, true, but more as friends, as they seem to share this deep, almost platonic connection. Interestingly enough, Anara is also an orphan, same as Jabin, and doesn't know who or where are her parents. And this shared tragedy obviously played a large role in drawing these two tragic souls together. Since they were close, Jabin often shared with Anara his disturbing, reoccurring dreams. nightmares of drowning in the lake Under Aimrah, under the influence of some unknown mystic force. To make things even more bizarre, after one such nightmare, while sailing across the lake, he found a peculiar wax amulet in his pocket. He gave it to Anara, and Anara will now gladly give it to us, as she finds it ugly and disturbing. Alright, so that's quite a lot of info to process, but what's most important, Anara also doesn't know what happened to Jabin and will beg us to find him. So, with the ugly peculiar amulet in our hands, we are back to square one. Except, on our way out, we'll be approached by Zadatis, a blind drunkard. And this is where our story goes even deeper into the weird. So who is Zadatis? Well, he's a retired sailor, spending all day, every day, drinking and storytelling. And he'll offer us a story as well, for the price of a single maste. I reckon you already realized this town isn't very welcoming to outsiders. It's not your fault, friend. Some say that suspicion and superstition are in every true Aimrah's native's blood. Hehehe. With the exception of me, of course. All Zadatis isn't averse to strangers. I welcome them all, especially the ones who buy me drinks. Zadatis will then go on to tell us a little history of Aimrah, ultimately claiming that he in fact knows what's truly going on, especially in regards to missing Jabin. So it's on us to sit down and listen. Now, the brief summary is this. About 30 years ago, Morrowind's south was torn apart by the Arnesian War, fought between Argonians and Dunmer. As Argonians victoriously marched north, there was a well-justified fear of them crossing the lake and invading Aimrah. So certain local families decided to, well, make a deal with the inhabitants of the lake, none other than the fearsome dreugh, and make them protect Aimrah. According to the local lore, it was the very Marvus family that made the deal. To be precise, Captain Obadur's father. It's not exactly known how and with what means of communication, but fact is, Argonians never crossed the lake, and since then, Marvus family was blessed with nothing but wealth and fortune. Now, how's that for a story? A secret pact with a mysterious dreugh. How is that even possible? In any case, that still doesn't explain what happened to Jabin. Although Zadatis will add that Jabin isn't the first one to mysteriously disappear, and that many have gone missing since the Arnesian War and the supposed pact with the dreugh. Old Sailor will end with a quite frightening suggestion. What if all these missing people were simply offered as food for the dreugh? And it's kinda known that these sea devils love a tasty elven flesh, so it's not that surprising. However, there is another interesting piece of information. If we ask Zadatis about Paruddma, name of Obadur's ship, he will say that it's a name of Captain Obadur's mother and that no one ever saw her. Noting as well that it's quite a strange name for a Dunmer. So, another mystery.
Well, if it bothers you so much, just don't look at it, alright?
Alright, after taking in all this information from Anara and Zadatis, we are ready to question one last suspect. There's another member of the Marvus family in town, Obadur's brother, Barandus, who is the local guar keeper. Barandus will be, as expected, not that willing to talk. However, he will throw a rather unusual twist. He'll in fact accuse Ivan Salet as a main suspect. What if the person responsible for Jabin's disappearance was the friendly, caring priest all along? I mean, I can see some sense in that, and what's great is that now we have a chance to investigate both of their apartments, as both Barandus and Ivan have a room in the apartment complex right here in Aimrah. I'm going to be honest, I went to Ivan's room first, only to find it unlocked, even though he's not there. And even stranger, once inside, I found... Yep, this is Jabin, just laying on the bed with missing arm and a leg, lungs filled with water, obviously drowned. And this is sort of a break point. You see, we are now offered a choice accuse Ivan of murdering Jabin, I mean, we did find a body in his room, or believe in his innocence and agree to solve this strange case. Obviously, if we want to see this resolved, we need to side with the priest. To be totally honest, when I played it for the first time, I had a tiny bit of suspicion, but the fact that Ivan would leave his room unlocked with the body inside made it obvious that he is indeed innocent and someone tried to set him up, with that someone obviously being the Marvus family. But that's not the strange part. Could the story told by old Zedatis be true? I mean, even for Morrowind, a game full of bizarre and alien things, story of a secret cult performing human or elven sacrifices to the dreugh is really difficult to comprehend. If Jabin's body was indeed carried to Ivan's room, then someone had to see something. And Ivan will point us to Ratis Falveno, a local weirdo who is always hanging around the apartments. If pressed hard enough, Ratis will agree to talk, but not here. He'll suggest meeting somewhere more private, like the basement of Aimrah's warehouse. Obvious trap is obvious, but we gotta play along. So heading down to the warehouse basement, we'll find Ratis standing in the corner, next to the crank. I mean, how obvious can you be? But this entire storyline wouldn't be as amazing if it wasn't full of, well, little surprises. Like this one, for example. You see, Ratis will try to kill us, sure, but I gotta say, it's done in a creative way. Instead of going toe to toe with us, he'll release the water and simply stand there waiting for both of us to drown. With the trapdoor now locked, we only have two options. Violent one, involving killing Ratis as quickly as possible, taking his keys and running away, or waiting for him to drown if we can hold our breath long enough. But prior to that, Ratis will share a couple of interesting lines, like Jabin taking his own life instead of being killed. Also, Ratis will constantly make gulping sound, which I think suggests some kind of a weird, unnatural fish-like sound. Combined with his deformed, grotesque appearance, it's obvious that Ratis is undergoing some kind of a transformation and is willingly sacrificing his own life. All in all, this is a very memorable, dramatic moment, never knowing what to exactly expect, with a nice little twist. It also marks the beginning of the last chapter, if you will, as things start turning from bad to worse. Upon escaping the basement, we'll discover that Ivan went missing as well. Our only remaining ally, Zedatis, will urge us to finally contact Aimrah's hetman, Dava Aranim, and convince her to give us the keys to the lighthouse, as he believes that cultists gathered there. And as a little reminder, in Morrowind, hetman is a title of a local deputy or community leader, someone who basically enforces laws and gives tasks. Dava will agree to give us the keys if and only if we explain everything to her through dialogue. And not only that, she will send 3 Induril foot soldiers to aid us inside the lighthouse. With that said, we are ready to begin the final and most exciting chapter of Shadows Under Aimrah. It's time to confront the cult. Lighthouse at first seems abandoned, except that Ulvo Telvor, current lighthouse keeper, can be found at the top, inside his room. However, Ulvo doesn't seem totally fine. In a lack of better words, he seems to be in the process of transforming into a dreugh. Insane and extremely hungry, we should speak carefully to him while trying to de-escalate the situation. Remember the peculiar Vex amulet given to us by Anara? Showing him to Ulvo will convince him that we are the new members of the cult, and he will then tell us how to open the secret entrance to the caves underneath the lighthouse. After that, well, I think it's only fair to end Ulvo's suffering. Moving the dreugh shield on the wall reveals the secret entrance, and followed by guards, we can finally confront the cult consisting of entire crew of Paruddma plus Barandus, and minus the bearded worm. If we choose the bribe option back on the ship, he too would be present in the cave. In any case, from here on, things are pretty straightforward. We have to defeat all the cultists, have one final dialogue with Captain Obadur, and release Ivan from the cage. Another sign of a well-written questline is that feeling of wonder and mystery lingering even upon completion. That feeling of suspense still hanging in the air. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's cover the aftermath of our little Lovecraftian episode. Jabin is dead, obviously, but we do find out that, and this wasn't really all that surprising, he was a member of cursed Marvus family, together with Anara. So the true reason behind their deep connection was in their blood. They obviously never knew about it. So it turns out that Obadur's father did make a pact with the dreugh, specifically with an entity called Paruddma, but also had a brother who refused to participate. And Jabin and Anara are brothers' children, orphaned and left in Aimrah for one single purpose: to be sacrificed to Paruddma. You see, we never found out what happened to their father, but Marvus family has some kind of a bond with Paruddma. Dreugh require blood in return, specifically from a member of Marvus family. My guess, once in a while, dreugh seem to follow some kind of a cycle or a pattern. Every now and then, they'll emerge from the depths and demand a sacrifice. And I can only imagine what would happen if their demand wasn't fulfilled. So in order to save his own life, Captain Obadur intended to sacrifice Jabin, who in turn jumped off the cliff, choosing to rather take his own life than being eaten alive by sea monsters. Priest Ivan was but a random, regular snack, someone who knew too much and had to be removed. But with Jabin out of the picture, Obadur needed another candidate, and my guess would be Anara.
May I help you, Outlander?
As for her, there's a sort of a secret or hidden ending, depending on our dialogue choices. If we talk with Zedatis first and ask all the right questions and only then proceed to talk to Anara, we can let Anara know about her origin, and she'll eventually move to the ship. As a last living member of Marvus family, she inherits the ship and is finally able to leave Aimrah, something that she always wanted to do but couldn't afford. Although knowing that she's of a Marvus bloodline and all alone on that cursed ship on a lake filled with hungry dreugh, it doesn't really make me comfortable. And then there's Ivan. Traumatized from recent events, he'll ask for some time alone, but will eventually agree to meet us back in the apartment. Ivan also plans to leave Aimrah for good, but will sadly display some unusual symptoms, suggesting that he got infected with the same curse that turned Ulvo into that monstrosity. Honestly, I felt really bad for him. All we can do is suggest seeking medical help, after which he'll mention going to Serintul. This is also optional, but in my opinion, best choice as we actually get to see Ivan again. So, to my question from the beginning, what constitutes a good quest? Maybe I should also add a satisfying but also bittersweet ending, one that leaves a lasting aftertaste. Curious to see if I'll really find Ivan in Serintul, a secluded temple tower east of Old Ebonheart. I went there as soon as he disappeared from Aimrah. Serintul is sort of a hospital affiliated with the temple, dedicated to helping the ill, mostly pilgrims, on their road to recovery. And sadly, Ivan Salat is indeed there, in a much worse condition. According to the healer, he arrived from Aimrah hardly lucid and only got worse since then. Ivan is found in one of the rooms underneath, almost unrecognizable and unable to speak. That is, he'll utter in great pain one last word, or a name: Paruddma. Ivan's fate remains in the hands of the temple. As healers are unable to cure his strange affliction, he will most likely transform into a dreugh-like monstrosity. And then, who knows, will he remain locked up or be executed? I guess it remains to be seen. So we got our resolution. Anara is free to run away and start a new life, hopefully. Priest Ivan lies plagued by an unknown incurable disease. And Zadatis, well, nothing much changes there. He'll stay in the Sailor's Inn, drinking and storytelling. But there's also a remaining mystery, and that's something that Zadatis will also briefly mention at the end. What if this entire dreugh conspiracy goes much back further, even before the Arnesian War? What if the story of Marvus' family making a deal with the sea demon Paruddma is only an echo of something even older? Also, remember when I said that sometimes monsters do live in the darkest, most distant corners of the world? What if I told you that we can actually meet Paruddma? Not that I'd recommend it though, unless playing with a high-level character capable of spending days underwater. So for the end, let's investigate the heart of this entire mystery. Paruddma, name that followed us all throughout the questline, like some kind of a sinister shadow over, or in this case, Under Aimrah. Being, after all, not only a name of Obadur's peculiar ship, but also of his mother. So who or what exactly is Paruddma? Well, this is where, in my opinion, questline goes from great to amazing. I love a good mystery and a fact that we never get a full, concrete answer, at least not that I know of, is part of its charm. But we do get a number of suggestions and just enough pieces of info to kinda piece together somewhat coherent picture. And again, for the sake of this video, I'm going to be very brief and summarize most of it. So, according to the clues left around the cave, what seems to be happening is that Obadur and his little edgy cult believe that Paruddma is an avatar or reincarnation of Rudiman. Yes, same one that Vivek talks about in his sermons. This is a domain of weird, esoteric lore, so take everything with a grain of salt. According to the story, Rudiman was created when a Dunmer child from Nissus found a dead carapace and decided to wear it as a prank. This carapace was in fact Molag Bal's old image from the time when he ruled Mundus as a chief of the dreugh kings, thus causing the transformation of that child into the Rudiman. This all ties in with the theme of Kalpas and Lyg, which is or was supposedly a previous manifestation of Tamriel, or perhaps even a parallel dimension. But what's more important for us to know is that Vivek eventually fought and defeated Rudiman. The exact spot of the battle was in the Coal Cave near Nissus, a popular but quite dangerous pilgrim site. In fact, during the pilgrimage, player has to defeat a unique, powerful dreugh warlord in order to recreate the epic battle between Vivek and the Rudiman. So, going back to Aimrah, as I already mentioned, Obadur believed that Paruddma is in some kind of a relation to Rudiman, possibly even its reincarnation. They regard Paruddma as an essentially immortal, godlike being, capable of bestowing wealth and power in exchange for, well, food. But what's strange is that, according to the original version of the story, told by Zadatis, locals made a deal with the Paruddma only for the sake of protection against the invading Argonians. There was nothing mystical or religious behind it. Yet, only 30 years later, we have an entire cult formed with an esoteric doctrine, heretical texts, robes, and ceremonies. As it's known, current dreugh are considered remnants of a much more advanced civilization that ruled over Lyg. Whether this means in previous Kalpa or on some alternate timeline, it doesn't really matter in regards to our story. Their ruler was Molag Bal, who also wasn't quite the same as he's known today. Thus the term carapace of his old image in the story of the Rudiman. Obviously, there's some kind of a transformative or shape-shifting method involved, in the lack of a better words. Again, we are never told how could Ulvo or Ivan Salot change into the half-Dunmer, half-Dreugh abomination, except that they came into contact with the Dreugh within the cave. My guess is through some kind of an ancient, long-forgotten Daedric magic, as I believe that Dreugh and ultimately Paruddma herself have a strong Daedric connection. They may not be Daedric beings themselves, but there is something, let's say, unnatural about them. In any case, Paruddma herself can be found in the game, hidden deep within the lake, south of Aimrah on the very edge of the map. There's a vast labyrinth underwater called Paruddma's Maw, containing not only a large number of dreugh and obviously Paruddma, but also remnants of some bizarre ancient kingdom. There's an entire alien world down there, a huge underwater city filled with many treasures and dead ends. And Paruddma can be found in the colossal chamber at the very bottom. I gotta be honest, seeing Paruddma for the first time gave me chills all over, as I didn't quite know what to expect. And seeing this truly unique, terrifying sea demon was one of the scariest moments in the game for me. Paruddma is level 40 and not an easy opponent at all, especially in her natural environment. Now, slaying Paruddma won't trigger any new dialogue among the townsfolk, so it would be interesting to maybe have an option to tell Zedatis, or who knows, maybe even reverse Ivan's transformation. In the end, I just want to say that there's a whole another quest in the Mages Guild that sends us to Aimrah to seek Paruddma and capture her soul. And I suspect that it also has a role of introducing shadows under Aimrah to the player, but it's not required at all. And in my case, I simply stumbled upon Aimrah and triggered the quest. But knowing about these, let's call them satellite storylines that kinda revolve around the shadow under Aimrah, only add more gravity to the questline. They're not necessary, but at the same time expand the overall image and really make the world seem more organic and interconnected. So all in all, kudos to quest writers, especially for creating such a dramatic, suspenseful storyline in a game that is, for the most part, text-based and with static NPCs. I also wonder if we're gonna see more of that obscure dreugh lore and Paruddma in future releases, as I have a feeling that this isn't the end. In any case, thank you all for watching. I have more Tamriel Rebuilt videos coming up soon, and with the upcoming epic release, things are about to get wild, so stay tuned and see you soon.